friends. I'm Dipali Bedi. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work with Sukum Psychotherapy Center and I run this awareness program by the name of Sukum Pledge to Seek Help. Today I'm going to talk about this news about Bois Locker Room. Before starting with the Bois Locker Room, I would like to interestingly talk about this incidents which had happened with me when in 2003 I had shifted to Gurgaon. 2003, when I shifted to Gurgaon, in my campus there was a neighbor. A father with his hardly 6-7-year-old son who had just started going to school. The son comes back home and the father asks, the same evening the father asks the son, "Koi girlfriend bani?" Being not my space of interference, I did not, but I was slightly shocked with that. What was the father trying to teach the son? Is he just trying to neutralize the language? Or is he trying to say that the girls need to be objectified? I don't know. At this age of 6-7, what are you trying to teach your son? In now more than 15 years of my practice, I have seen the culture around me, which is talking about trying to I remember once when I was a student of psychology and I just started reading psychology, there were two concepts about how children are treated. One is as young adult and second is about them not knowing anything and they being the kids. I don't know, I have felt that in the last 15 years, the biggest change which I've seen is where kids are dressed, girls or boys are dressed as young adults. And are introduced to concepts of adults. Not long back, but maybe maximum 6 months back, I was having a discussion with a group of colleagues on my WhatsApp where one of my colleagues had mentioned about a minor girl having a relationship with a man who was double her age. And when I tried to say that it might be looked into even as a concept of basically sexual abuse, and under the POSCO law one needs to really consider of really registering that case, I was immediately said that I'm behaving like an old auntie who is very black and white in deciding at what age a female can have a relationship. And almost got a lecture from that few colleagues of mine who said that you know nowadays girls are at the age as young as 12 having relationships or even younger having relationships. And how can you say that this is a case of sexual abuse? I said I can still ignore when a 12-year-old has a relationship with a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. But here we are talking of a minor being abused by an adult. was double her age. Well, that discussion went on for some time, but then I realized that it was not worth me getting into that discussions, because the females, the colleagues on the other side, were very sure that it's a case of relationship, although the girl was hardly 14 and the guy was double her age. So seeing younger kids as being sexually active is even becoming the norm. And maybe that's the reason there is a voice that it might even then need to we really need to rethink the idea that are these kids who are actually raping the girls should be seen as minor or not, which was a huge discussion which happened during the Nirbhaya case. And obviously we know about how our law and order works. Nirbhaya case was known to most of the population in India, and a lot of them abroad too. Besides that fact, we all know how many years it took for justice to come through. And is this even still a complete justice? Can be debated about. So we know how the law and order in our country works. So completely not getting into the discussion of how it should be, how would the law and order around this case work? Because a situation where a girl was raped and everybody knew it and everybody knew about the details of the case, besides that, where even the culprits were ready to acknowledge the fact that it was categorically said by them that she had no right to be outside and thus she was raped by us. So there was complete acknowledgement of the fact that she had no right to have an independent decision on where she can be by herself. Even in that case, we know how long the justice, how was the legal system working. But then coming to the psychological and the social aspects of it. So it is becoming a norm that we have to normalize the idea of sex as early as possible. Is sex education what we are talking of? Interestingly, I was seeing one TV news about, again, the boys' locker room, and one of the psychologists said that as far as sex education in school is concerned, they just talk about reproductive part of it. And interestingly, she said it need to cover up psychosocial, sexual aspects of it. And to end it all, she ended it with just including the idea of how sex can lead to various sort of diseases like AIDS or sexually transmitted diseases, and that's it that she ended it with. And she tried to say that how sex is about the biology. When we see sex as biology and only biology, we only talk about, then how different are we from talking about it as just the reproduction? when we have to talk about the psychological aspects of it and the social aspects of it, we have to understand that human sexuality is not completely biologically controlled. We don't have a season when we are sexually at the peak. There's a bit of it. Females have reported about their increased desire for sex in the middle of the sex when it's almost time for the ovulation and before the periods, which is because of the hormonal changes. But is it that intense that she cannot control it, or she cannot satisfy it in any other mode, which might include masturbation? So sex per se for humans is not just biological. It is a lot about the social aspects also. None of us talk about the idea of getting abused on the first night of sex if it is a love marriage, because somewhere down the line it is so very socially imprinted that बाकी दिन उससे पहले भी हुआ चलेगा, उसके बाद में भी होगा चलेगा. That night it needs to happen. So somewhere, obviously, we are sometimes even socially ready for having a sexual relationship with a particular person under certain circumstances and under social approved ways. Equivalently, questioning our own sexuality when there is a broader sound of what you did was incorrect, even if you were completely psychologically ready for it. To understand the psychological aspects of sex, I am reminded of one of my cases. I don't know if I have the complete right to call it my case, because I could not see her through, and she hadn't come with an intention to get complete therapy. I think she just wanted to vent at once and talk to somebody who can accept what she had to say. And she came in for therapy, and she at that time I was working with a hospital where it wasn't a system of pre-appointments. Patients would at time walk in. And she came in with this idea. She said, I just wanted to talk to you and tell you about this, that as a kid I was sexually assaulted by two of my cousins on regular basis for years. That got over with me growing up. Then I got married to a man, and she very clearly said that, I don't think I could have expected a better person in my life. He is extremely loving, caring, all the positive adjectives that I could get. But she said that, the worst thing is I don't get sexually satisfied by him. Because for me, the normal is about having two men by my side. That's my normal. So she had come with this guilt that, with being with this man who was otherwise the best man that she could expect in her life, she doesn't get sexually satisfied with him because she expects or has a desire for two men to do it simultaneously with her. This is the psychological impact. A girl who was immature and was experiencing that abuse by her cousins, and over the period of time started enjoying it, now cannot enjoy a normal sexual relationship between between two persons. Her sense of normalcy has changed to two men with her. And obviously her guilt, because socially she knows her expectation and her desires are pathological. So this is how deep-rooted can the psychosocial impacts of relationship be, are this intense. I'll give you another example of my client. This was a male client who had come after his marriage, having huge issues in marital relationship, where he came in with this concept of how disturbed he is because he cannot satisfy his own wife because of his last experience with his girlfriend before the marriage. He says his normal, his expected desire in the relationship, his fantasies about the sexual relationships were very well satisfied by his ex-girlfriend. He doesn't have a relationship with her anymore. They have both moved on. But emotionally he's not able to get out of that relationship because still has a desire for a similar fantasy of how he needs to have sex with a female. There are multiple such aspects which define individuals' sexual desires. And we are trying to make it too simple for the kids by just talking about the biology of it. I was initially zapped when one of my clients had come and talked about his inability to get aroused by his wife. And his ability to understand it, that it can be because of psychological reasons and there's nothing biological about it. So there's so much of biological, psychological, social reasons, combinations of things which define our sexuality. Aren't we trying to make it very simple for ourselves and for our next generation or our kids? By just expecting them to understand it by a lecture given by a teacher or an external person or a parent once in a while, and some even less than that. It is a complex situation, it is a complex understanding. And when we are trying to normalize the words, words like rape, words like girlfriends, and this is more about being cool. Yeah, anyway, expecting them to not really understand the complexity of what we are talking of. And the complexity of things which I, at the age of 45, when discussing with my clients, don't have a black and white answers to give. Because it's too complex. So how are we trying to make it so simple for them? In this process of oversimplifying it for them, by just expecting them to understand it once that you have talked to them, whereas the other surroundings are giving a very different understanding of what it is. Where there are movies where girls are objectified, there are serials where girls are objectified, there are fathers who are talking of other females in an objectified form. There are females. There are females equivalently who are objectifying the other girls. People who are trying to talk about sex are trying to talk about it in as a very simple biological sense, or it's completely shunned down and not talked about at all. It's trying to oversimplify the whole situation. It's a complex situation. If we are disturbed by this thing, I think there is a lot of change which needs to happen. And there needs to be a lot of understanding, communication. It is not just one-time understanding, it is not one-time communication. It has to be a lot of changes which needs to happen. It's a lot of discussions which need to happen. We expect boys to think differently, but when the father is doing the same, when the brother is doing the same, the uncles are doing the same, the other men on the roads are doing the same, and where females even think it's normal, where interestingly, ever since this case came up, one of my client, a girl who was 16 to be correct, not 18, she came up with this thing that she was watching the news when this came up, and her mother tried to say this is exactly how guys are, and she said I didn't know how to react to it because I was too upset with the way how my mother reacted to it. We cannot just journalize things. We cannot normalize things. We cannot even just patronize, dictate, lecture. That even wouldn't work. It's deep rooted aspects which have not been talked for years, have been shunned from talking from years. Today all of a sudden when they are being talked about, they are talked about in a, they are oversimplified, whereas it's not a simple case. There's a lot of efforts which needs to be done to really talk about it, discuss it, think about it. Why are the guys basically becoming so casual with an idea of if they can really abuse a girl? And it's not surely all. So we even need to distinguish that. And is sex and is rape, we should not forget, is not just sexual. It is even about reinforcing the power. Men which in the current scenario are losing their power, where female laws are coming in, a lot female based laws are too high. I'm not talking about the applicability of it, but yes, there are a lot of laws coming up in the favor of the female. Implication of which is used, abused, everything. We'll not get into that debate. Where females, because of their financial independence, has come to a stage where they are less likely to tolerate a lot of stuff which initially was tolerated. Otherwise, the expectation from a man and the power of the man is reducing because of the even education of the females. And somewhere down the line, the rise of the mother is questioning the position of the father and thus of the man. So when we see this case, we have to see it in all the aspects and just not look at it very simply. And we don't have a simple solution to it. The solution is, let's start talking about it. Talk to these kids, talk to the parents, talk to the society, and redefine a lot of rules and the laws also. I'll end it over here, but I think there's a lot that we can talk about it, so I would love to have comments on it. Thank you.